Take two. All right, I'm going to try and do this again and be a little bit better at it this time. This is a White Mountain Knives exclusive Kizer. At least this pattern for the moment is. This is the Cormorant XL. So this is a little bit larger than the standard one is. It's not ridiculously huge like, say, the White Mountain Knives exclusive Begleiter XL that's full 4 inches. This one's a little bit more restrained. It's a 3.3 inch blade, whereas the original Cormorant, I think, is just a little bit under 3 inches. So a little bit larger there, and for me, that makes me happy because it has a little bit larger handle. That was the reason why I ended up passing up the original one here. Yeah, this has a black and white G10, or at least, yeah, white for the base, and then a black peel ply texture going on here on the front. It's not really going to rub, all your skin off of your hand and destroy your pants and everything else that you hold dear like an Emerson would. But it's a decent happy medium as far as the grip goes for it. As far as the original one, they do have quite a few variants of it out, but this is the only XL one so far, so maybe there'll be more. I don't know if they would be White Mountain Knives exclusives or if they would go somewhere else. Couldn't really tell you at this point, but I can say that the original one also came in several variations of the black and white G10 like this. And they also had a micarta variant, and then there was 2 titanium variants. One of which had a frag pattern, and the other one was a little bit more smooth. So, want to talk about this blade here. It's got a 3mm blade stock thickness on there, which is pretty darn good. Nice and thin to start out with, but it doesn't look super crazy thin. But that's also because it has a saber grind going onto it. But it's also hollow grind, as you can see. The light kind of curves instead of, you can see it all at once once that facet gets into the camera there. And this thing is actually hollow ground and crazy thin behind the edge. This is a slicing dream. This thing will just soar through basically anything that you end up putting in front of it. However, as I do say that, this thing is super thin behind the edge here, that does make sense as to why they went with the steel that they did, CPM 3V. If you're not familiar with CPM 3V, it's not really a stainless steel, but it is a crucible particle metallurgy steel, just like, M390 or 20CV or S30V or any of those sort of things. It's particle metallurgy. But it is made by Crucible, mostly used in fixed blades, because it has a really high amount of toughness, as well as being able to hold an edge for a long time. So it really makes sense for a lot of bushcraft blades and other survival knives and things like that. But because of all of that added toughness, having something that thin behind the edge that actually has a lot of edge holding capabilities and the toughness, 3V makes the most sense. So I'm glad to see that on there. If you are also familiar with them as well, there's also 4V. And essentially, 4V has a little bit more vanadium in it than 3V does. So it has a few more vanadium carbides in there that ups the edge retention on 4V a little bit, but also sacrifices some toughness. So 3V is still probably the way to go. And there's also, why not, since I have the Kizer drawer open, there's also 10V, which, obviously a whole bunch of numbers don't necessarily mean the whole thing. As far as the blade steel goes, it is a little bit different as far as toughness and edge retention and all that sort of stuff goes. They're all good steels, but I do think the 3V was probably a fantastic choice for this here. It's a button lock, of course. And it's built a lot the same way that the Kizer Hic-cup was. That was released around the same time, maybe just a little bit earlier, a month earlier or something like that. They're both designed by Azomai. Whether or not this actually says that on the blade or not. But yeah, both the Hic-cup and this are designed by that particular designer who mostly works with Kizer anyway. So there you go with that. How about if I do some blade size comparisons here? Let's see, I'll go ahead and do Benchmade first. There's the bug out up top here. And we have the Benchmade 940. You can see, fairly similar as far as the 940 goes. Maybe just a little bit taller in the handle. Let's move these guys out the way. Let's bring in some Spydercos then. There's the PM2. Has the same blade length kind of thing, but the handle's a little bit longer. And of course the Endura is just a larger knife in general, being over 3.5 inches. And why not? Yeah, we got the Broker Kalashnikov 74. That's the Desert Warrior pattern, if you're curious as to why it's all pink and blue like that. And there's the K-Bar Folding Hunter from Dozier Design, Mr. Bob Dozier. So, yes, I'd mentioned the cutting geometry on that. It's fantastic. Like I said, super thin behind the edge, and having a nice tough steel for it to reinforce that, pretty darn good. This thing has a fairly large finger notch here. It does remind me of another knife that was probably released in the last couple of years. Probably in the last year or so that kind of has that same kind of notch there. A lot of people said it was really ergonomic. I cannot for the life of me remember what the hell that knife was. So my apologies there, but it does have this kind of a larger index finger notch here. And as it's kind of the larger variant of this particular thing, I end up having 2 different grips that I can end up doing. Well, several, but you can grip it with your index finger in there, and you feel super, super locked in. To me, this is basically a 3.5 finger grip on here. Or 3 if I'm going to be a little bit more relaxed, if I'm going to be poking a little bit more than cutting down towards something. And that works out all right. But you also have a lot of flat stuff up here, because the blade doesn't start till like way up here. So you can choke up on this and easily get a full 4-finger grip. And the jimping is for both locations here. So you got that ramp, but you also have it all up on the top. And if you have that thing super nice and locked in there, you have a ton of power right up here at the beginning of that belly before the tip. You can just muscle that through basically anything that you want. Works out really, really fantastic. The button lock is recessed just a little bit in there, which isn't absolutely necessary, but it's a nice thing to have there. And as you can see here, we have the ability to swap that clip. So that helps out with those 10% of the population that's left-handed, and or also being able to carry it off-handed. As far as being able to manipulate it in your other hand, super easy. I don't really have any problems doing that, right or left-handed. And I'm not super good at doing a whole lot of things with my left hand. A little bit of guitar, a little bit of typing. Other than that, I don't know. I guess it does things while I'm in the shower sometimes. Not like, oh God, that was... Okay, let's scratch all of that from the record. I was just talking about cleaning myself, but... Okay, so what does set this knife apart from a lot of others is the fidget factor. This has basically every deployment method under the sun. You got standard flipper there. You got the jimping there for the front flip. That works. And then you got the hole here with the cutout, so you can slow roll with the thumb. And you can spidey flick that guy as well. And if you don't want to use any of those, you can just push down that button and use some centrifugal force. So all sorts of fun for being able to play around with that. It's got basically their standard pocket clip, and it works out all right. You can see the screws here are pretty much flush, and it's inset there, so you have plenty of room to get whatever pant material into there, or wherever the hell else you might want to clip it. I don't know. Let's see, let's go ahead and talk about the weight on this thing then. This is 3.68 ounces. So it's not quite that ounce and inch mark. It's a little bit heavier than that. And a lot of that probably has to do with the G10 scales there. But if you are more metrically inclined, that's 104 grams. And the thickness of it is 0.51 of an inch. So basically the same as the Spyderco PM2 here. Give or take a point or two of a millimeter. This is 12.9 millimeters, and I think the PM2 is 12.6 or 12.7. Somewhere right around there. Nears makes no difference. So yeah, I got all those measurements out of the way and talked about all the nice cutability here. I will do some nice cutting, nice and slow here. And then, of course, yeah, if you want to go fast, this thing will just ridiculously tear through material. So it's a joy to be able to slice and stuff like that with. So this does a great job at a lot of EDC tasks, but maybe not if you want to use it for a work knife that you want to rely on to do some heavier tasks, just because of the way that this thing is ground and all of that, as I had mentioned earlier. Yeah. Yeah. So they do have a whole bunch of other variants of the smaller original version. They have 3 different variants of this black and white G10. I think one of them has some lines. This one has the 2 X's. And there's also one that has like the PlayStation buttons on there. So square, circle, triangle, X. For I don't necessarily know why. I guess maybe it was tied in a little bit more with Squid Game than PlayStation, because I couldn't imagine that Sony would probably want to grant somebody access to that stuff. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. But there's also a version in micarta. It's kind of funky looking brown micarta, quite a bit like something like this here. Which is a little bit different than what I've seen for most Kizers out there, but hey, I guess that seems to work. That one also has the little X's there. And then they have a couple of titanium versions of that as well. There's one with a frag pattern that looks super sweet. And there's also one that is basically smooth, but it does have these 2 X's. I honestly don't know if they're embossed or raised on that one. I haven't actually had my hands on it personally. And both of those titanium ones, for whatever reason, use a different steel, even though it's the same steel. One of them is in M390, one of them is in 20CV. It's the same steel, it's just one of them is manufactured in Austria, one of them is manufactured here in New York. I think that's where Crucible is. Or at least Niagara is, which is part of Crucible that does a lot of their particle metallurgy stuff. So, yeah, whatever. I would absolutely love to see this kind of larger pattern of it be done in some other hand materials. That would be I would absolutely love to see it in I don't know, maybe that frag pattern titanium. That'd be pretty sweet. But also just micarta or something like that option there, just to get it a little bit lighter. That would be just kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, as far as everyday carry kind of stuff, this thing works out super, super great. The reason I brought up the different variants there is that these G10 scales aren't exactly my absolute favorite form for this particular knife. Probably because Kizer's been doing a heck of a lot of good work with micarta recently. But these G10 scales are fairly thick on this thing too, so I think they probably could have made it a little bit thinner. I don't know. But that's basically my standard review here. I am going to take this thing apart so we can kind of take a look on the inside of here. It is built a little bit different than some other button locks out there, which is kind of why I wanted to do that. Something to note here is that the pivot was actually originally on that side. I changed that when I took that apart. So that's not how it comes from the factory, but it really doesn't matter either way. But okay, we have one screw here for a barrel spacer. Note there's 2 barrel spacers there. And then I can take a T8 for the pivot here. And with that, the top G10 scale will come off. And you can see we have a couple of mounting points here. And just a little tiny weight relieving hole going on there. But yeah, at that point we can just set that aside here. And we can see that this second barrel spacer here is floating, and as in it's attached through both of the steel liners, but it's not screwed into place or anything like that. So just a little interesting and different there. You might want to be careful when you're at this step because the liners don't really protect you from that blade. And if it's anywhere as near as sharp as I've actually gotten this thing, that might be a problem for you. So. Yeah, at this point, it does take just a little tiny massaging or using just a little bit of a spudger here to pop that back off there so we can actually pull that guy out. Come on out of the pivot. You can do it, buddy. There you go. All right, there's the button collar, which they've only done on a few models, but this is one of them, the Hic-cup being another one of them. Okay, so we can see here, essentially, we have their, a little bit lesser, I suppose, bearing things. They're still ceramic bearings, but that black material, I think, is Delrin. I might be wrong on that, but that's mostly what it looks and feels like to me, which is a pretty heavy-duty plastic. So, you know, it's not bad. It's going to be as good, if not technically a little bit better than a lot of those white and clear nylon ones that a lot of other companies use, like Tucson and, I don't know, everybody else. Something else to note in here, I suppose, is this pivot here, which, never mind, just came out the back of it, yeah, as I was talking about that. It is D-shaped, though, so that's nice. I don't really have too much worries with that, but also it's D-shaped, but it's also D-shaped on this back pivot here, so it makes it really nice and easy to have that fully established. You don't really have any troubles before you're trying to put the knife back together with exactly where that D-shaped pivot goes. Here's the thing that I really found interesting, and that's that this button is actually in a groove here. You do actually have to unscrew this thing from the back spring cup if you do want to actually fully remove that. For the most part, you don't need to do that, so I'll just leave it there. And you can see it basically has a couple of positions that it will end up being in as it's operated. This reminds me a lot of Cold Steel's old Axis lock. I forget what they actually called ding lock. I call it bad because most of the time their access lock would slant from one side to the other if either side of that access lock was a little bit loose, and it would just jam the knife. But you know, that's been replaced by the triad lock from a long time ago. So yeah, you can open it up. It's not too bad. It is a little fiddly trying to get it back together. And part of that comes from the spring here, which if you're building it from the, I don't know, the bottom up, like I end up doing here, then that is a little bit more difficult. You have to make sure that this cup is properly grabbing the spring, and then you can mount it into the pivot there, and then I end up moving the blade so that it's not fully open. That actually helps keep that button from actually jamming, because it's easy enough for it to get a little bit sideways at this point, and then it doesn't go straight up and down in the hole, and then, you know, the blade doesn't end up wanting to close once you finally disassemble or fully assemble the damn thing again. So hey, you can keep all that information. Is probably kind of important if you want to do any kind of maintenance on here. But all right, easy enough to slap this guy back on there. And you do really, really want to make sure that everything is fully mounted correctly, including that other stop pin there. That can kind of get to you if you are messing around with some things and having some problems kind of putting it back on. There's that pivot color, or that button color. You'll put that on there. And then you can put the G10 scale on top of that, and that holds that collar basically in place by that groove that's in the direct center of it. At this point, I can finally put that pivot screw back through there, as long as I can actually get my screwdriver bit to go where it needs to go. There we are. And at that point, yeah, I can close it up. So I don't have the blade exposed, and I can go ahead and toss that back screw on there. No blade play, but the pivot seems to be a little tight for me. So let's go ahead and change that up just a little bit. Yeah, still no blade play, but all sorts of flingy. So, yeah. I like this thing quite a bit. It's quite new. I honestly don't know at the moment if it's sold out, but like some of their other Kizer exclusives, like the Begleiter XL and stuff like that, they are doing extra runs, so you might not... So if you're seeing this and it's sold out, what I'm saying is it's still possible for you to get a hold of one, rather than, you know, it disappearing in the mist like Spyderco sprint runs and and things like that. But yeah, I'm really happy and appreciative that they ended up making a little bit larger version of that. I don't necessarily mind the smaller blade of the original, but I really do need that longer handle for my hands. So that's just a limitation of how I was built. Man. All right, that's now everything that I wanted to cover here with the Kizer Cormorant XL. It's a fantastic slicey blade with a whole lot of fun ways to open and close it. So, all right, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. Sounds good.